Welcome to program Bachelor of Science, first year. This is subject botany, the first semester. Course code is BOG 101 and course title is Environmental Biotechnology. This is Unit 6 and the name of this module is WTO and the Environment. I am Ms. Marina Janice Rodriguez, Assistant Professor in Kamal College of Arts, Science and Commerce for Women, Nuwe, Goa. In this module, we will be seeing what is WTO, that is World Trade Organization, World Trade Organization and Sustainable Development, Trade and Climate Change, Harnessing Trade for Sustainable Development and Green Economy, WTO Cooperation with Multilateral Environmental Agreements. By the end of this module, you will be able to state the role of World Trade Organization, describe the fundamental goals of World Trade Organization, discuss the role of World Trade Organization in mitigating climate change, summarize the methods of harnessing trade for sustainable development and green economy, explain the cooperation of World Trade Organization with multilateral environmental agreements. World Trade Organization, usually abbreviated as WTO, is the only global international organization dealing with the rules of trades between nations. WTO agreements are negotiated and signed by world's trading nations and approved in their parliaments. The World Trade Organization and Sustainable Development. In 1994, Marrakech Agreement was signed by 123 countries. It was an agreement defining the trade rules. In the preamble of the Marrakech Agreement, they established the WTO. The establishment of the WTO had fundamental goals that were recognized. These goals were sustainable development and the protection and preservation of the environment. WTO promotes more open trade to achieve sustainable development by providing WTO members the flexibility they need to pursue environmental objectives. A distinction should be made between trade measures with a genuine environmental goal and measures that are intended as disguised restrictions and are applied in an unjustifiable and arbitrary manner. There are two fundamental principles that govern international trade by taking measures to protect the environment. These two fundamental principles are the first one, national treatment. National treatment means the imported and the locally produced goods should be treated equally. That is, in all terms, in all respects, the imported goods from other countries and the locally produced goods by native artisans should be given equal importance. Usually, we see that the locally produced goods lose their importance with the oncoming of imports. So, the imported and the locally produced goods should be given equal treatment even after the foreign goods have entered the market. The same is applied to foreign and domestic services, trademarks, copyrights, and patents. The second fundamental principle is Most Favored Nation, abbreviated as MFN. It means that under the WTO agreements, countries cannot normally discriminate between their trading partners. If any country grants another country a special favors in terms of lower custom duty rate for any of their products, and the members have to do the same for all the other WTO members. So there cannot be a favored nation in any terms of trade concerned. Coming to trade and climate change. We know trade impacts a lot of environmental processes. Climate change can negatively impact the trade by disrupting distribution and supply chains and raising the trade cost. The World Trade Organization, being the cornerstone, plays a key part in supporting climate action. WTO provides a framework of disciplines to facilitate global trade and serves as a forum to negotiate further trade openness and to discuss trade concerns. The World Trade Organization rules require that the members to be transparent when adopting new measures impacting trade with legitimate policy objectives such as combating climate change. It means if any of the WTO member countries want to implement any change in their trade or implement a new policy, they have to be very transparent with the policy. Harnessing trade for sustainable development and green economy. The United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, usually called as Rio Plus 20, was held in Brazil June 2012. The objectives of the conference were as follows: secures renewable political commitment for sustainable development, assesses progress and remaining gaps in the implementation of the outcome of major summits on sustainable development, and addresses new and emerging challenges. In the view of the WTO Secretariat, the Rio Plus 20 conference should affirm commitment to promote an open and equitable rules-based multilateral trading system that is non-discriminatory and predictable. It should also benefit all the countries seeking sustainable development. It should ensure that measures with a trade impact taken for environmental cause do not constitute a means of unjustifiable discrimination or a disguised restriction on international trade. It should utilize WTO mechanisms for monitoring of national measures with trade impacts, including green economy measures, so as to enhance understanding and dialogue to avoid risk of trade tensions. It should promote an international trading system that renders to the needs of developing countries by ensuring that trading initiative assist developing countries in capturing the benefits from trade in their transition to a green economy. WTO cooperation with multilateral environmental agreements, which are also called as MEAs. The WTO Secretariat cooperates with a number of implementing bodies for multilateral environmental agreements, following their work and providing information on WTO rules and mechanisms. The first one, WTO Matrix on Trade-Related Measures pursuant to selected multilateral environmental agreements. The multilateral environmental agreements are an important means for countries to tackle environmental problems, particularly those international or global in scope. There are over 250 MEAs dealing with various environmental issues currently in force. About 15 of these MEAs include provisions to control trade in order to prevent damage to the environment. Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, also abbreviated as CITES. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Flora and Fauna is an international agreement between governments. The aim is to ensure that international trade in specimens of wild animals and plants does not threaten their survival. CITES works by subjecting international trade in specimens of selected species to certain controls. All the import, export, re-export, and introduction from the sea of species covered by the convention has to be authorized through a licensing system. The key features of CITES. CITES allows international trade in specimens of selected species to certain controls depending on the classification of the species in various appendices. Sides trade-related measures serve as a core regulatory system of the Convention to prevent opportunities for illegal or unsustainable trade and promote compliance and enforcement of the Convention and facilitate action against non-compliance. These are my references. Thank you.